We live in a world that is held together by a fragile digital thread. Every dollar you own, every debt you owe, every transaction you make is nothing more than a line of code on a server. We trust that when we tap our cards, the payment will go through. We trust that when we check our banking apps, the balance will be there. But what if that trust is misplaced? What if the digital ledger that records your entire financial existence could simply vanish? This is not a hypothetical scenario from a science fiction movie. It is a specific event that has been simulated, wargamed, and prepared for by the most powerful financial institutions in the world. They call it a cyber pandemic. And just like the biological pandemic of 2020 changed the world forever, a cyber pandemic would fundamentally rewrite the rules of money, ownership, and power. The World Economic Forum, the same organization that hosted the Event 201 pandemic simulation just months before COVID-19, has been running a similar exercise for the digital world. It is called Cyber Polygon. The official narrative of Cyber Polygon is benign. It is described as an international training exercise to increase global cyber resilience. Corporate teams from major banks, tech companies, and government agencies gather to practice defending against a massive supply chain attack. They simulate a scenario where a sophisticated malware infects the global digital infrastructure, shutting down the internet, freezing banking systems, and halting supply chains. It sounds like a prudent safety measure. But to those who study the history of these simulations, it looks less like a fire drill and more like a dress rehearsal. We have seen this pattern before. When the elites simulate a crisis, that crisis often manifests in reality shortly after. The timing of Cyber Polygon exercises, which began gaining prominence in 2020 and 2021, coincides perfectly with the accelerating fragility of the global financial system. The debt bubble is bursting. The derivatives market is a ticking time bomb. The fiat currency system is reaching the end of its mathematical lifespan. A natural collapse of this system would be messy. It would lead to uncontrollable hyperinflation, civil unrest, and the likely overthrow of the ruling class. But a controlled demolition disguised as a cyber attack? That offers a way out. If the banks go dark because of Russian hackers or an AI virus, the anger of the public is directed at an invisible enemy, not at the central bankers who printed the currency into oblivion. It provides the perfect pretext for a great reset of the financial ledger. Imagine waking up one morning in 2026. You reach for your phone to check the news, but there is no signal. You try to log into your bank account on your laptop, but the site is down. You go to the grocery store to buy food, but the card readers are offline. Cash only, the sign says. But you don't have cash because you were told cash was obsolete. You drive to the ATM, but the screen is black. Panic sets in. It isn't just you, it is everyone. The entire digital nervous system of the global economy has been severed. This is the scenario that Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, warned us about. He stated, "We all know, but still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a halt the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole." The COVID-19 crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison to a major cyber attack. Why would they warn us? Because in the world of geopolitical strategy, revealing your hand is a form of programming. It prepares the public psyche for the trauma to come. It normalizes the idea of a digital apocalypse so that when it happens, we are paralyzed by fear rather than mobilized by rage. The Cyber Polygon exercises are not just about defense, they are about establishing the narrative. They are planting the seed that the internet is dangerous, that digital anonymity is a threat, and that the only solution is a more centralized, controlled, and surveillance-heavy internet. The terrifying part of these simulations is the specific focus on the financial sector. They are not just simulating a power grid failure, they are simulating a corruption of the financial database. This is a crucial distinction. If the power goes out, the data is still there when the lights come back on. But if the data integrity is attacked, if the ledger itself is scrambled, then nobody knows who owns what. Your bank balance might say 0, it might say 1 billion, it might be gone entirely. In that chaos, the old system dies. The unpayable debts of the sovereign nations, the $35 trillion US debt, the massive Eurozone liabilities, can be erased, not paid off, but deleted, blamed on the hackers. And in the aftermath, when the desperate population is begging for a solution, the central banks will roll out the system they have been building in the shadows for years. They will offer a lifeboat, but to get on the lifeboat, you will have to leave everything from the old world behind. To understand why a cyber pandemic is the perfect cover for a financial reset, we must look at the mathematical reality of the current banking system. We are in the late stages of a long-term debt cycle. The global debt to GDP ratio is unsustainable. Governments are borrowing money just to pay the interest on the money they already borrowed. This is a Ponzi scheme. And like all Ponzi schemes, it requires a constant influx of new liquidity to keep from collapsing. Historically, debt cycles end in one of two ways. Default or hyperinflation. A default is catastrophic for the lenders, the elites. Hyperinflation is catastrophic for the currency and the society. Neither option is attractive to the people currently in charge. They need a third option. They need a reset. A reset allows them to wipe the slate clean without taking the blame. If the bond market collapses because of bad policy, the Fed is blamed. If the bond market collapses because foreign adversaries hacked the clearinghouses, the Fed is a victim. The narrative shifts from incompetence and greed to national security crisis. This is where the concept of data integrity attacks becomes central to the theory. In recent Cyber Polygon exercises, participants practiced responding to attacks where data wasn't just stolen, but altered. Imagine a virus that infects the SWIFT payment system or the databases of the major prime brokers. It doesn't just shut them down, it randomly changes the numbers. Transactions are duplicated. Collateral is double counted. Ownership records are scrambled. Within hours, the global financial markets would freeze. No bank would lend to another bank because they wouldn't know if the other bank was solvent. The trust that underpins the entire credit system would evaporate instantly. This is a systemic liquidity freeze, but on a scale that makes 2008 look like a hiccup. In 2008, the problem was bad mortgages. We knew where the toxic assets were. We just didn't know how much they were worth. In a cyber pandemic scenario, we wouldn't know who owns the assets. The legal title to your house, the record of your stock portfolio, the balance of your 401k, all of it resides on digital ledgers that are interconnected. If the root ledger is corrupted, everything downstream is corrupted. This creates the problem in the Hegelian dialectic. Problem, reaction, solution. The problem is total financial chaos. The reaction is mass panic, riots, and a demand for order. The solution? The Central Bank Digital Currency, CBDC. While the commercial banking system is frozen and under investigation for data corruption, the Federal Reserve, or the ECB, or the BIS, could announce an emergency measure. They could say, the old banking network is compromised. We cannot trust the data. However, we have a backup system ready. We are launching the digital dollar, or FedCoin. Everyone who downloads this app and verifies their digital identity will receive an immediate emergency credit. This is the bait. You are starving. Your credit cards don't work. Your savings are inaccessible. And here's the government offering you a lifeline. Most people will take it. They won't read the terms and conditions. They won't ask about privacy. They will just want to buy groceries. But here's the trick. The emergency credit is not a restoration of your old wealth. It is a restart. The narrative might be that the old data is irretrievably corrupted. Or perhaps they will offer a haircut. You get 50 cents on the dollar for your old deposits, converted into the new CBDC. The rest is gone, sacrificed to the cyber attack. This allows the government to default on its obligations without technically defaulting. We didn't refuse to pay your bonds, they will say. The hackers erased the record of your bonds. We are doing the best we can to make you whole. It is a sophisticated form of bankruptcy fraud committed against the citizenry. Furthermore, this transition solves the problem of unbanked or dissident capital. In the new CBDC system, there is no cash. There is no anonymity. Every unit of currency is tracked. If you had cash under your mattress, it is worthless in the new digital-only economy unless you can deposit it, and good luck explaining where you got it during a martial law crackdown on a financial crime. The cyber pandemic is the bridge between the dying fiat system and the new digital control grid. It is the chaos required to birth the new order. Without a crisis of this magnitude, people would never voluntarily give up their privacy and financial autonomy for a CBDC. They have to be terrified into accepting it. We must also look at the geopolitical dimension of this warning. The narrative of the cyber pandemic is increasingly being tied to the new Cold War. We are told that Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are forming a cyber axis capable of bringing down the West. This external threat is convenient. It justifies the militarization of the internet. In the US, we are seeing the lines blur between big tech and the intelligence agencies. The cybersecurity industrial complex is booming. If a massive cyber attack happens, the immediate response will be a lockdown of the internet. We might see the introduction of a digital passport just to get online. The argument will be, we need to verify everyone on the network to make sure they are not Russian bots or Chinese hackers. This is the end of the open internet. It becomes a permissioned network, similar to how the banking system works today. You will need a license to operate. But let's look closer at the vulnerability. Why is our system so fragile? The financial system has been centralized into a few massive hubs. The clearinghouse interbank payment system, CHIPS, Fedwire, SWIFT. These are single points of failure. The centralization was sold as efficiency, but it created systemic risk. The Cyber Polygon exercises often focus on supply chain attacks. This means attacking a third-party software provider that everyone uses. We saw a preview of this with the SolarWinds hack and the CrowdStrike outage. One bad software update or one compromised vendor can take down thousands of organizations globally. This structural fragility is known. It is a feature, not a bug. It allows for a cascading collapse. If the elites wanted a resilient system, they would encourage decentralization. They would encourage cash. They would encourage local banking. Instead, they have pushed for digitalization and globalization, creating a domino setup where if one falls, they all fall. In a 2026 scenario, the attack might not even be a hack in the traditional sense. It could be an inside job, a glitch, or a false flag operation. The technical details won't matter to the average person. What will matter is the result. The screen says access denied. This event will also be used to target cryptocurrency. Bitcoin and other decentralized assets are the only real lifeboat in a financial collapse. They are outside the banking system. They are immune to a localized banking freeze. Therefore, the narrative of the cyber pandemic will likely blame crypto hackers or claim that the malware is spreading through blockchain networks. They will try to shut down the on-ramps and off-ramps to crypto, labeling it as a national security threat. We have to ban Bitcoin to stop the hackers from moving their stolen funds, they will say. It is a preemptive strike against the only competition to their new CBDC. They know that if the banks fail, people will flock to Bitcoin. They have to poison that well before the crisis hits. The psychological impact of this event cannot be overstated. Money is trust. It is a collective hallucination that these green pieces of paper or these pixels on a screen have value. A cyber pandemic shatters that hallucination. It reminds us that we don't own anything digital. We only have permission to access it. When that trust breaks, it doesn't come back. The new system will not be based on trust. It will be based on verification and force. You won't trust the CBDC because you believe in the Fed. You will use it because it is the only thing that buys bread. So if the simulation is already running and the date is approaching, what can you do? Is it hopeless? No. The very fact that they have to simulate it, that they have to manufacture consent, shows that they are afraid of our reaction. They need us to be passive. They need us to be unprepared. The antidote to a cyber pandemic is analog resilience. First, you must understand that digital wealth is not real wealth in a crisis. If your net worth is entirely in numbers on a screen, stocks, bonds, bank deposits, you are vulnerable to the kill switch. You need to diversify into bearer assets. These are assets that you physically hold and control. Gold and silver are the ultimate insurance. They do not require electricity. They do not require an internet connection. They do not have a counterparty risk. If the banks go dark, a gold coin is still a gold coin. It is universally recognized value. Cash is also critical. While inflation is eating it away, you should always keep a cash emergency fund outside the banking system. Enough to pay for gas, food, and medicine for a few months. In the first few weeks of a cyber crisis, cash will be king. The electronic payment systems will fail, and merchants will only accept physical currency. Second, you need to secure your data. Assume that the cloud will vanish. Print out your financial records, print out your bank statements, your property deeds, your insurance policies. Have hard copies of your essential contacts. If the database is corrupted, your paper trail is your only proof of ownership. Third, build local networks. In a systemic collapse, the global supply chain breaks. You cannot rely on Amazon or Walmart. You need to know your local farmers. You need to know who can fix a car, who can stitch a wound, who can drill a well. Community is the only true safety net. And we also need to support decentralized technologies that are resistant to shutdowns. Mesh networks for communication, peer-to-peer marketplaces, Bitcoin, held on a cold storage device, not an exchange. These are the tools of the parallel economy. The Cyber Polygon warning is a gift. They are telling us exactly what they plan to do. They are showing us the vulnerability. Most people will ignore it. They will say, it can't happen here. They will trust that the bank will always be open. When the screen goes black, they will be helpless. They will be the ones lining up for the CBDC handout, accepting whatever terms are dictated to them. But you have the chance to be different. You have the chance to position yourself so that when the digital lights go out, you are not left in the dark. The financial system is being rebooted. The operating system is changing from democratic capitalism to technocratic feudalism. The cyber pandemic is the installation wizard for this new OS. You can decline the update, but only if you prepare now. I'm Tom, and this is The Wealth Collapse. Subscribe now to stay ahead of the curve, because when the history books are written, you'll want to be one of the few who saw it coming.